Ellen, you're running again this November for City Council.
Yes, I am. I'm very pleased to have won the COPE nomination.
Okay. And you've been for 3 years again, and what have you accomplished?
Well, it's been a long, hard 3 years on City Council. So I've worked on issues such as opposing the tax shift from business to residential. I stood up against some of the civil liberty concerns I had, including closed-circuit TVs during the Olympics, and opposed free tickets for councillors. I've been working hard to get housing, affordable housing. I had a motion to get housing over the new Strathcona Library, and I opposed the demolition of the housing at Little Mountain and at Fraser Street. I opposed mixed martial arts, and I've stood up for neighborhoods and area plans, and opposed big developers who just think they can go in and put up big projects and make millions of dollars and not provide the adequate community amenities and low-income housing that we so desperately need in this city.
And the province is probably saying, but we can. That's why we do it. What happened to the Little Mountain housing?
Well, Little Mountain was one of the first public housing projects in the city on 15 acres of land up on 36th and Main Street. And there were 700 units of affordable family housing. And the province sold this to a developer who they said had to have access to the property right away, and told the city that they needed a demolition permit before they even had a development permit. And in the end, the city gave them the demolition permit, and all but 4 units were destroyed. And, the people were evicted out of all of those units. The site still lays empty except for those 4 units, and there's thousands of people on the streets right now. We've got the biggest crisis in homelessness and affordable housing the city's seen since the Great Depression. This is terrible.
What could a city have done to oppose that demolition?
Well, I think that we needed to stand up to the province, because the province was saying behind the scenes that if we didn't agree to give them a demolition, if the city, I oppose it, but if the city didn't give them a demolition permit, then they wouldn't provide the funding for the 14 sites that we have in the city that we had an agreement to develop housing on. Now, those 14 sites, the agreement is to build SRO units on those sites. It's not to build family housing. But what the province said is that we will give you half of the proceeds of the sale, about $75 million, to develop on those sites. And the rest of it is going to develop sites around the province. But meantime, we've lost 700 units of perfectly affordable family housing.
Going back to the issue of shifting taxes from businesses and onto homeowners. The argument from Vision is that businesses benefit the public by employing more people, and that they need that break because they were perhaps overtaxed.
I moved motions for small businesses, that small businesses should be given a lower tax rate than big businesses, and that's gone to the provincial government. But in this case, Vancouver has the lowest tax rate of most big cities in the world. If you look at, and this is a study done at KPMG, and what we're seeing now is the continuation of the MPA tax policy of shifting 1% of business tax onto residents means we either have to put a 2% increase on the tax bill, or we have to find a savings of about $10 million by cutting services in the city. So over the time, it's been about $50 million that's been lost to city revenues, which could have gone to paying for parks or gone to the Property Endowment Fund to build housing, or keeping the cost of services low. So that's a huge loss of revenue to the city, and a break to businesses that already have the lowest tax threshold of business in the 45 major cities around the world.
So you don't think that helps at all into more employment?
Well, the theory is trickle-down economics. If you believe that big businesses give that savings to their renters, there might be an argument there. But there's been no proof that renters, if small business, say, is renting from a big business landlord, that in fact there's any alterations to the rent that they're paying. In fact, rents for small businesses and across the city are going up. So I don't think that's a very good argument to be using.
The will of the people was just expressed recently in the HST referendum. Now there is a new possibilities of a referendum with this smart meters. Would you support something like that, or you don't think that's going to go anywhere?
Well, I think that there's really valid questions about smart meters, that in fact it's a huge expense of money, and that you could put that money into towers and to other ways of saving energy, because you lose 400 good jobs, and you also, what's been experienced in other areas that have used the meters is there's not been a substantial savings of income. So I think that, I don't know that a referendum or a poll is the way to go, because in fact the province has already done that. But what I think we need to do is get the municipalities to speak out at UBCM and say that this isn't the way that we're going to be saving on environmental costs. And we do need to do that. We need to ensure that people realize how much energy that they are expending. But I think the way that BC Hydro is pushing this through is not the way we need to go. And just like the HST was a tax break for the big corporations and the polluters, and it was an added tax on the little businesses, and which has been very hard on little businesses.
Well, the HST was already implemented when the referendum came. Yeah. So wouldn't the same thing apply to the smart meters, even if they're already in process of installing them? Yeah. Could that somehow reverse, or you don't think that people have enough smarts to know what is good for them? Well,
I think that COPE 378 has got a good fact sheet that people should look at on their website that informs people about smart meters. The provincial NDP has been opposed to smart meters, and I think that there's the resolution coming to the UBCM about smart meters, so that if we can get that kind of momentum, I think that we can turn this thing around. But right now people are very divided and they don't have the information they need.
So do you think there should be more information, more discussion, and eventually a referendum?
So far, it's the exception rather than the rule that you win referendums. So I'm not saying that we might not have enough momentum, but it's very difficult to win referendums. So I'm hoping through the resolution at UBCM and, through political pressure this way, that we can get a change. If we can't get it this way, then maybe the referendum is the way to do it. It's just that the way the vote's taken, it's very hard to win it.
Okay, so you want to be re-elected to finish up specifically what?
Well, I fought hard for affordable housing. I fought very hard for area plans for the different neighborhoods. I've stood up to the developers, and I've fought for civil liberties, and I fought for the safety of people in the downtown east side, and worked with neighborhoods, Marpole, West End, Grandview Woodlands, across the city on various issues. I want to continue to do that. I want to work to get some kind of ward system in place, and I want to work on a number of seniors issues that I've started working on. So, I think that I've begun a lot of work, and there's much more to be done. I think that we need to make sure that this Vancouver is a city for everyone, and I think they know that they can count on COPE that will stand up for this.
To stand up for those issues, but being a minority in the council when Vision has the majority will be mainly up to them to make the decisions.
I found that when I stand in principle on issues, whether it's on housing issues, which I won that vote on putting housing over the Strathcona Library, or some of the civil liberties issues that I stood up to. There's lots of issues that I've stood for, opposing MSP premiums on seniors' pensions. there's all kinds of issues I've stood up and gotten the support of Vision on, or changed their position to a more progressive position. So I think it's important to be able to have a full voice on council for people in neighborhoods, and I've been able to do that. And I think that people have asked me to run because I've been able to stand up for them, and I've been able to influence and bring new ideas to the table and give a strength to the voice of low-income, working-class people in neighborhoods. So that's worth being back there and continuing that work.
I'm a bit concerned about our recent residential tax rate. Council decided to, in order to keep business taxes low, to make the residential tax rate 7%. So this year, anyone who owns a home in Victoria is seeing a 7% increase in our residential taxes, whereas businesses will only see a 1% increase. And I think that that is unsustainable. At a time when our city council is so focused on creating affordable housing and of making the city of Victoria more affordable to live in, it makes absolutely no sense and is unjustifiable to raise our property taxes for residents is 7% just to artificially keep down the business tax rate to around 1%. And I say that both as a property owner and as a downtown business owner.
Mm-hmm. So you voted against that proposition, but the majority of city councillors approved it?
That's right. I was the only person who voted to keep the residential tax rate down, and what I was proposing instead was more of an equalization tax. It would have meant a 4% tax increase for residents and property owners, and a 4% increase for businesses. But unfortunately, I was the only person to vote to try and keep that residential tax rate under control, and I just think this is unsustainable. What we know about our city and our region is that we have a 25% rate of childhood poverty, that we have the lowest average income in the entire region at about $38,000, and that this is a really difficult city to afford to live in, and this isn't going to help.
The counter-argument to this, which is that some businesses will rather move to a city where their taxes are going to be lower, and in order to keep them here, then they're trying to please these businesses.
Taxes played a very small part in that consideration. What we have to realize and remember is that businesses go where residents are. And if we can encourage people to live downtown and to live in Greater Victoria, the businesses will stay here. Box stores move out to places like Langford and Saanich because that's where the population's moving out. It's not the other way around. Populations don't move to follow box stores.
Because of taxes.
Exactly. And so I think that ultimately when a store decides to establish itself in Langford or Saanich, taxes play just only a small percentage of the consideration as to why they do that. But if we keep a vibrant downtown population, then I have no doubt that the businesses will want to be here as well.
The intention of direct democracy is to shift the decision-making power or legislative power from a few elected representatives to all of us, the majority of citizens. So what we need to do is to participate in a polling system like this, so we can demonstrate to ourselves and to the politicians whether or not we want fair free transit system, more bicycle pathways, more public washrooms, fun harm reduction sites and mental health centers, etc. These policies should be the decision of all of us, not up to just a few politicians. What do you think? Remember, social change will not happen automatically. If we the people really want our agenda to rule, we the people must initiate and legislate our own rules of governance. Your participation is the essence of direct democracy.